Okay, great. We are recording. My name is Ann Bennett. I'm the Executive Director of the Laurel Historical Society. It is Tuesday, April 6, 2021. The recording location is DC Homme on Main Street in historic Laurel. And we have several participants at that location talking specifically about the protest in Laurel that happened last year. And to get a little background on that. So I'm going to turn it over to the participants at DC Homme and have them introduce themselves.
So my name is Amy Dunham, and we'll do spelling of names as well. So it's A-M-Y, last name is D-U-N-H-A-M.
I am Dave Singleton, D-A-V-E-S-I-N-G-L-E-T-O-N.
I'm Carlos Hinojosa, C-A-R-L-O-S-H-I-N-O-J-O-S-A.
Martin Mitchell, M-A-R-T-I-N-M-I-T-C-H-E-L-L.
And Karen Lubinecki, that's L-U-B as in boy, I-E, N as in Nancy, I-E-C-K-I.
So we understand, Carlos, this kind of came out of you and your friends. So if you might just kind of start with where this, for the idea for the protest and how it, kind of the process came about, how Martin got involved, that type of thing.
Yeah, well, you know, after watching the video of George Floyd's brutal murder, my friends and I, we were really interested in going out and showing our support, like protesting against police brutality. But none of us could drive. It was the middle of the pandemic, so we couldn't go to DC, even though that was like the most local one. So we definitely wanted to do something local. At first, it was just a flyer. We maybe handed out to some of our friends, and then from there it grew. And you know, we said we need to make this safe. If it's going to be big, you know, we're expecting maybe 20 people, 30 people, even then there has to be an adult. So, you know, just to keep up updates, you know, in case of weather, we made an Instagram.
And sorry, when you were planning this, how old were you and your friends?
So I was, I think I just turned 17. And I was the youngest in my friend group. Most of us were 18, 17. Yeah, we're all juniors in high school, finishing up our junior year. And so we started planning this just protest, you know, maybe signs on the side of the street. But then it started to grow. And so I created an Instagram, Laurel stands for justice. And, you know, we got some volunteers. And then as we started to grow, we started getting following and people started sending like out the flyer. And then that's when Martin came in. He DM'd me on Instagram, and he said, "Hey, I'd really like to help you out. Like, I think we can make this big." He introduced himself as the president of the Prince George's Young Democrats, and we got really excited. And I started making a whole bunch of different social medias and reaching out, getting volunteers, and Martin was able to connect us with the Mayor Mo, and the Chief of Police, and really make it as big and as safe as possible, because we pushed peaceful protests, because at the end of the day, that's how we need to get our message across. It turned out great. We actually ended up getting over 2,000 people, which is bigger than I or any of my family or friends ever expected it to be. And it really was such a great thing, because it showed how, you know, you can come together as a community. Most of us were all local, and how help from strangers can really get a message across.
Yes, I didn't know if I was just supposed to hop in, and you know, Carlos was doing such a great job. Yeah, I mean, Carlos kind of told the story from my perspective. I am a wrestling coach at Laurel, so one of the wrestling coaches, I think he sent it to me in the DM, or he had shared it on social media. So I said, "Oh, something's going on in the city," and I didn't know about it. Wow, it's crazy. So then there wasn't much like contact information on the initial flyer. So then that's when he said they had set up Instagram, so I just sent the DM, and you know, he responded pretty quickly. Like I think I just said, hey, you know, I'm interested in helping. You know, do you guys need help? So then he said, yeah, sure, you need help. And from there, I shared the picture, and I remember Mayor Mo, he had reached out to me the next day because I guess he got some inquiries into the city hall about the demonstration. So he was like, you know, are you behind this? And I was like, well, no. I mean, there's actually a group of high school kids behind this. You know, I just recently learned about this, and you know, I'm just trying to help them with logistics and you know anything else possible to you know make this as big and as safe as possible. So then you know that's when the mayor got the police chief involved, and you know at first we didn't even we weren't going to close off the streets. I think there was going to be one lane closed off, but then you know as they said, as people started coming out and sharing it, it just grew. So we knew that you know they needed to shut down that whole street, and you know for me it was very impactful because you know I've been a resident of Laurel 20 years and I've never seen you know that street shut down, of course, for that long, especially for you know a demonstration. And you know I know Carlos modestly said 2,000, but I've heard numbers upward of 3. So you know I don't know what the actual count was of people who attended because there were people all the way down Cherry Lane, you know, on the brim of their community, you know, cheering on and supporting, you know. So it was a really good experience, and you know, I'm glad that they came up with the idea because you know, at the end of the day, you know, people, you know, try to give me credit. I say no. These kids, they came up with the idea. They were what? I'm sorry, not even kids. Carlos is he's an adult now, so I've watched him, you know, become an adult. So, but you know, I was very proud that they started something, and you know, I just wanted to help them, and I'm great that it got so much coverage. And you know, I was surprised at the turnout and just the diversity of the turnout. You know, and that's representative of Laurel diversity.
Yeah.
Martin, I got a question for you and Carlos. Martin, you said you are a resident of Laurel for 20 years.
20 plus, yes.
20 plus years. And Carlos, how long?
About 6-7 years.
About 6 or 7
Yeah.
years. Okay. Was there any experiences at all in Laurel to make you want to that inspired you to do the protest? You know, how do you feel about the race relations in
I
Laurel?
let Carlos go first. Yeah, I let Carlos go first.
Yeah, I moved to Laurel in the 6th grade, and previously I lived in Montgomery County, and over there it's not as diverse. So when I moved over here, I really diversified my friend group, and it was such a I really liked Laurel because it was quiet, but it was also full of culture, and it's such a vibrant community. And my friend group, we're mixed. We have a bunch of different ethnicities and ages sometimes. Definitely growing up, especially in Maryland, we were always told like the history of African Americans and the effects of the civil rights movement. So I was always really grateful for that, for learning about art culture, because I'm a first generation American, and I've always seen it as art culture, something that we all have to come together and learn about and appreciate and grow from. And just imagining, you know, because it was George Floyd, but then also a few days later, I think it was Ahmaud Arbery, and you know, police brutality was always present, even from when I was young. There was always those cases in the news, and when Black Lives Matter first started, I was probably like in the 3rd grade. But with George Floyd, and I was finally old enough to get my voice out. But what was frustrating was I couldn't vote. And that was something that was extremely important, especially that year with the presidential election. And all of my friends, that was our main motivation for getting out and protesting, because we're right on the cusp of voting, and I cut off by only a few months. I turned 18 in May. And there was just so much that we needed to do, but we might not have, could have. And it was time of the essence, really. It was I think it was a Thursday when we first made the flyer. It was just a conversation in our group text. And then 4 days later, that's when we had the protest. And I saw people from our school. It was like Martin said, it was so wide. There were people of all ages and ethnicities and local restaurants too. And everyone, it was really an amazing thing. And I'm so lucky to have grown up and in a community that's so diverse and where I can learn because I mean, we all have our own biases and we're ignorant to, and learning from experiences from other immigrants or first generation Americans or people who have lived here their whole lives and their through generations go back hundreds of years. It's something that I'm just so grateful for.
Martin,
Yes. Well, no, was it the same question?
yeah,
So then, no, I was gonna say I had
You've been here a
to.
little longer.
No,
I'm a resident of Laurel myself.
No, I'm gonna make it, briefer. But for the most part, I was very happy that this happened in the county. We were able to support, local demonstrations in the county because, as Carlos mentioned, DC was the sexy place to go, right? It was sexy to get these Black Lives Matter, pictures, sexy that's post up on, Black Lives Matter Avenue with the streets painted, that was sexy, absolutely. But as I mentioned, in the protest, there's issues that we have right here in Prince George's County, gorgeous Prince George's, class action lawsuits, against the Prince George's Police Department. And the thought you asked me was, has Laurel changed? Absolutely. And Laurel was never a bad place. Laurel just become more diverse. Like when I moved into Laurel around 96, 97, Laurel was still, probably majority white area for the most part. Laurel in 2021, I would probably argue, I'm waiting for the census, is a majority minority area. Two of the things I would say is like, whether we realize it or not, there's two different Laurels. Like Ward 2 Laurel was very different from Ward 1 Laurel. As far as the demographics, Ward 2 usually had more transient residents moving in and out. A lot of them young professionals, military, and Ward 1 would be a lot of your like senior, more Caucasian residents, and there is some diversity, but it is still older vibes. And that's one of the things that I love. I see Main Street coming into the 21st century and bringing in new businesses, and especially minority businesses. I think that's a great thing, integrating in the community. And if we're talking about, of course, race relations, I think that race relations plays a factor into it. I mean, I've personally seen Laurel police violate people's civil rights. You know what I mean? So it's nothing that I really haven't experienced. And, I remember a case in, it was 2011, I think about a CVS that he had strip searched somebody, and that was like a class action lawsuit. So, I mean, just to be clear, that's why I said that there's things that we can work on right here in Laurel, like, not to say that every place doesn't have their issues, but, growing up, I definitely felt a lot more pressure just walking around. Like now being older and having kids, I normally don't feel the same pressure, but it was definitely nerve-wracking as a young adult sometimes. Just knowing that, hey, you might just stop walking.
So seeing how you two are coming from different perspectives, which I think is awesome. That Carlos has been in the city a little less time, and you've been here a little bit longer and had some different experiences. I'd be curious what surprised you most as far as the response and the turnout, like either what demographic you saw that you were surprised to see, or a reaction that you were surprised to get?
I'm gonna go first. Well, I would say I was surprised by the amount of local businesses that chipped in. We had several local businesses like Lido's and Premier Bread, BJ's, Cheetos. And I think there was a couple other, sponsors, but they basically helped provide food for the volunteers and, some of the protesters. So that was great, and it chipped in at a moment's notice. So I was definitely surprised by that. And, I'd say I was surprised to see as many white faces as Black and brown faces. But that's been the beautiful thing about the movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, not the organization, the movement. That's been the beautiful thing about the movement this time around after George Floyd is that like I watched on TV protests that were like 90% white, and I'm like, that's a beautiful thing, you know, because that area might be like very, very heavily Caucasian. So like the fact that they were out there and protesting, you know, that was great. You know, to see that advocacy from all different areas. And one of the things I loved is that we had all young speakers. So, you know, there was a lot of raw emotion, and you know, some of them I saw them grow on the stage. One of them was one of the kids I coach wrestling. You know, Kenny. So I saw him, you know, become nervous and grow on stage as he's speaking, like getting more comfortable, and you know, that's what we strive. You know, also become better at public speaking.
For me, I remember getting an email, and it said, "Is this protest just for Black people? Can only they attend?" And I said, and I'm thinking through my head, no, of course not. And I don't think I did, but I sent a screenshot to the group chat of my friends, and I said, "Look at this," and it's hilarious, but it was also a really real question. So of course I emailed back, so no. Everyone can attend. We, you know, at the end of the day, we all need to work together in order to push change. And you know, there were so many people at the protest. There were, you know, family members, that there were people of all, like I said, all ethnicities, and I think it was really reflective of, you know, Maryland is so diverse, especially like towards the DMV area. It was really reflective of the whole protests around the world, because not only there were protests in every single state, almost every county, and then there were also protests for police brutality going on in the U.S. and other countries, London, Australia, and just what happened in Laurel,
Well, one thing I would say is the state's attorney, one of the state's attorneys have kind of reminded me that we were the biggest one in the county this summer. You know, so that's something to be proud of.
Yeah, it was
something to be proud of in the small city of Laurel, right?
I definitely remember texting my classmates from the previous year, like, hey, you guys have clout. Can you guys send this out? Let's try to get as many people as we can. And I was expecting maybe 300 at the most if we were lucky. Martin taught me that number. And I said, maybe if we're lucky. But there were so many people, and there are people on the balconies of their apartments waving their signs. And I like that we got support from the city.
Press coverage. We got press coverage.
We got press coverage too.
Sun,
I think I got a
NBC,
New York Times.
New York Times. Yeah, the delegate Pina Melnick set you up about. It was great. And one of the things I would say that I was happy to see was so many children there, right? Like that was a powerful statement to me. Like when I saw, like, you know, kids protesting and kids marching, because like this is something that they're gonna remember forever and growing up. Like, you know, I was a part of that. And you have many pictures of these little mini activists, because at the end of the day, one of the things that Carlos said, we wanted to continue preaching peaceful, you know, advocacy, you know, direct action, peaceful direct action.
It's funny you say that, because well, there were volunteers, you know, they gave water, they gave food, but one of the biggest thing was masks, because we needed to make sure we didn't know as much as we know now about COVID-19. And so there were quite a few people who made fabric masks for children, and I remember going on the stage and saying, hey, we have masks for kids. If you need them, please come up. And then there were so many children, or but people with kids, and they all came up, and we ran out of them. And it was so empowering, because one of the things that I wanted to do was get people who I was inspired by, like classmates and friends who were my age, who were in the same predicament as I was, that couldn't vote, to voice their opinions, because we're fighting for now, but we're also fighting for them. We're fighting for our younger siblings, the children we're going to have, and it's.
Well, I would say personal advocates, so advocating for them, a better future, absolutely. But one of the things I was disappointed in was that there were some individuals that were upset about the fact that we were having a protest and there wasn't going to be a 4th of July. And I love the 4th of July. You know,
it's great.
I participate every year. But you know, like, we have to understand that this is a critical moment, you know, in history, you know, and we want to be on the right side of things, you know. So and to be clear, usually what I saw at the lake was triple triple, quadruple that, you know, in size, because people come from different states and all over to attend Laurel's fireworks.
Yeah, I remember seeing that message on, because we also had a Facebook, and so we could get some of the, you know, older residents on and on Twitter. We also had Twitter, and there are people who were complaining that there wasn't going to be a 4th of July, and I said, well, there's a whole pandemic going on.
Yes.
The only reason, one of the biggest things that was stressed, especially in the beginning, was you can only go out if it's necessary. If it's only if it's extreme importance, you can't go out for leisure. If it's something important, and civil rights is always important. It was something we had to do, and that's the Black Lives Matter protests. They were overwhelmingly peaceful, like over 93%. And in all of them, you could just see people wearing their masks, which is something you didn't see for other ones.
Open up protest. The open up ones, yeah.
Like MAGA,
yes.
and stuff like that. And so it was definitely community.
I
Absolutely.
think there's a great point. You've mentioned social media a couple times, because I know you have the Instagram, and like you said, you're pulling in the older people. I have Facebook, so I'm laughing to it, but I understand your point. Have you? Well, I just have 2 questions on it. So you were at that point, school was virtual.
Yeah.
So it's one thing to be able to walk through the hallways of school and say, "Hey, we're doing this thing," and hand out a flyer or something. It's a little different, I'm assuming, now that you all are virtual, you're not necessarily as connected besides social media. So I guess part of it is how did the virtual school aspect, do you think that helped or hurt in any way? And do you think, like, where did social media really, how big was that?
Social media is everything. I mean, and not just this, social media is everything. I mean, because if you think about it, during the pandemic, that's how we stayed connected. You know, like that's how we share information. So the reason the mayor found out about it was because of, Facebook shares.
The reason you found about it.
Yeah, the reason exactly. The reason all of it, because, well, that was Instagram, and then he found out probably because other people called because of my Facebook share. But, Instagram, and I remember one of the things talking to Carlos and just helping him, as an OG, as I like to say, just an older gentleman, it's like, we got to get these grammar typos right. So like I was basically going over everything we put out has to be like proofread, and just being a stickler, like just trying to make sure that he was putting out the best stuff possible, because he's already good with social media. And the thing is sometimes you did a great job. I mean, you can help us out on the other protests we did later on. Yeah. But basically one of the things I wanted them to tighten up was making sure that we were looking professional, we were looking presentable, because you wanted news people to pick it up, and you didn't want errors out there because you didn't want the legitimacy of the event to be questioned. So social media is everything. We shared like crazy over all the platforms, and just text messaging. Like that text message chain. Send us all your friends. Send us all your friends.
Definitely, because it was June 6th, so it was only like 1 or 2 weeks before school was out. But I wasn't even in the city when I started planning it. I was out because at the beginning of the pandemic I had gone out to my godmother's house just to be more secluded, because everyone in my house is working, and so going in and out, and no one wanted me to stay safer. So I went out there and it was in the span of 4 days, and so there was definitely 3 nights where Martin and I were just texting back and forth.
A couple sleepless nights.
A couple sleepless nights.
Late ones, yes.
Yeah. And just so many text messages just from people and notifications, and so many people trying to volunteer. So social media definitely was a lifesaver. And then, like I said, I got all of my
fundraising.
Fundraising.
Yes.
We raised over $2,000.
Yes.
And
GoFundMe. Social media pushes.
And of course, I'm sure another 1,000 or 2,000 just in donations and stuff.
Yes.
Like food and masks and water. But I texted some of my friends. I said, you guys have a following. Can you send this out? And of course, a lot of the people I texted in my school, they're Black, and so it's extremely important for them. And so they were telling me, yes, of course, like anything, like I think it'll be great. And what was funny is there were so many people who didn't even know that it was me and my friends and I doing it, and they're just like, okay, so what is it like? And we put Black Lives Matter on it. Even we're not affiliated with them, and so they thought, and so there were quite a few people who were like, oh, that's so cool, this and that. But it was really just us high schoolers just trying to get our voice out, and social media definitely was a help.
I got another question. Martin, I want to go back to the comment you made about there's two laws, zone 1, zone 2.
Yeah.
And is there any reason geographically that you chose the location that you chose? The Main Street Museum is actually, I would consider probably in zone 1, which is more historic. Right?
Yeah,
But
it
zone
wasn't. I would say one that there was many reasons that location. I would say that the first reason was because we had the lakefront there, so we knew that like it would be very easy for people to spread out, and we would have access to the stage and everything. But also the thought it was like probably the main artery that we would think of in Laurel would probably be like Cherry Lane. Having the town center, having the high school there. And yeah, I mean, from the pictures I saw, it was very, very powerful just seeing images all the way down Cherry Lane. Like, and the thought is like, I've walked to Laurel High School, I've walked to Dwight D. Eisenhower, I've walked to Oakland's. I could have never imagined, walking past Laurel High School with like, some of my oldest classmates and their children and grandparents. And it was definitely a very powerful moment. But I agree that, I understand the historical, but I think, to be honest with you, I think it probably would have been more difficult to have, over here. And that's just from my personal opinion, because I know that like this is a historical area, and I know that like, there's different noise ordinances and this, that, so there's different logistics that come with the more historic area as well. So that's probably my comment on it.
I mean, and you're right. The gathering place is the lake. People come for the 4th of July and things of that nature. But there is two definitely different zones.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like Martin said, Laurel is definitely a great place. I live right on the outskirts of Laurel. It's kind of weird how the zoning is. It kind of like wraps around my community. But I live right down the street from Martin, and the lake is great there. And the protest was peaceful, and there was only like one hitch that happened, and that came.
That came from the historic side.
That came from the historic side.
Just to be clear.
Well, one of our city councilmen, he came and he had a Blue Lives Matter flag, and the blue line flag, and that's generally in. I remember getting like when we approached on it, like from comment, he was like, oh. Well, you're protesting peace, and they're protesting reform, and so I thought, it was okay to have that, because it was definitely.
No, I'll explain. Carl DeWalt is a decent guy. I don't dislike Carl DeWalt. I've met him many times, but he knows that wasn't appropriate. And the thought is like most of his council colleagues knew that wasn't appropriate, because after he started brandishing the sign, you could see most of them separating away from him. It was clear that, no one wanted to be pictured near him with that sign, and the thought is Carl definitely knew, because he's a retired police officer. So the thought is Blue Lives Matter is, of course, like, a response to Black Lives Matter. Like, we're about supporting, the police, they have dangerous professions. Not saying they do not, but, we're saying Black Lives Matter too, like, not that no one else does, but two being the imperative word there.
And of course, we got support from the local police too, and so that's we weren't protest. It was great that they were there. They were providing safety, or it was on call with them, and they were trying to make sure to watch so that there wasn't any actual physical but any physical violence of like terrorist groups. Like I think there's one guy called like the Hawaiian Shirts.
Oh yes,
yes. And they were just like, that's an actual threat. And of course they're but Carl DeWalt, and there was definitely an article. I interviewed someone interviewed me about that incident, and yeah.
I mean, there were some people upset. I mean, this is because there were some people upset because it just you had to read the room. You had to read the room, right? And the room was there for Black Lives Matter and the Blue Lives Matter fight, which is very distasteful, at that occasion, especially by the elected officials. But like that's more so what I go to talk about, like not being a skeptic because I love Laurel. I've raised my kids here, and I've grown up here, and want to continue to grow up here. But it's definitely still two Laurels. You know what I mean? Like I feel sometimes different vibes when I'm on Main Street as opposed to when I'm on Cherry Lane.
And that's what I was kind of getting at when you said there's two different vibes. It's historically Main Street because it is old. It has a underlying, I guess,
Racial tension.
Yeah, it's racial tension on Main Street because of the history and because it is older. That's why I asked the question geographically that I chose close to the Cherry Lane. But I think to grow, we would have to kind of bridge, the historical part with the younger people, to kind of, merge this thing so there isn't a racial undertone, to it.
No, I mean, I agree. And the first thing is getting us together and getting us in the room because, like, the thing that we realize is that we don't have as many differences as we, believe. And we always, many of us want the best for our children and our community. So, like, us talking to each other and actually having those conversations, can kind of, I believe, bridge that divide because then we get to understand each other. Like I know the biggest thing when I was a kid and I was fighting with one of my classmates. The best thing the teacher could do is like make us like sit together all day or like just be teammates on a field trip because like you learn like the reason you hate this person probably so much is because you guys are so you guys share so many similarities. And you just didn't know it.
Yeah.
So do you think in a way then that the protests provided an opportunity for people to in some ways get some education about obviously bringing the heart, I mean, come on, but also for people to kind of see, sometimes people get in their bubbles. Even within Laurel, we talk about it being diverse, so people still get within their bubbles. So do you think it was a way for people to kind of pop in and see what else was going on in the city?
I mean, I do think so. I mean, I got to meet a lot of residents that I've never seen before, and there's probably ones that I will see down the line. They're like, hey, I remember seeing you from the protest, and there's still people I talk to today that remember the protest. So that's gonna, forever be etched in a lot of people's, memory. And for me, it was impactful seeing, like I said, families. Like my mom, she wasn't feeling the best, but she made her way down to the lake and she was giving out masks. So like, that was very powerful. And like, my kids, they were at home on the balcony because we live at the lake and they were cheering, from the lake and, they could hear all the speeches, so it was a great moment for people to come together. And like, I was just very happy that even when we had that little hiccup, it was still peaceful. That after the fact, we were able to calm everybody's worries and, get back to what was at hand and, advocating. And like I always say, not marching today, but advocating also tomorrow.
I just want to say, I really applaud my friend Courtney Houston, she was the one who called out Carvajal. And I didn't even know. I didn't really realize what was going on. I was so busy just like running back and forth planning everything that I was like, oh, flag, cool. That looks heavy. Anyways, and then I realized like, oh, that's and then in the middle of stage talking, and I keep looking back at it. And then Courtney, she took the mic and she started speaking, saying what I didn't have the words for. So I always looked up to her because she was always very confident. She's a great speaker. But one of the things that I stressed in my speech was that we're all different and we have to appreciate our differences and we have to acknowledge them. And I was standing up there from a place of privilege. I'm not Black, and I don't face nearly as much struggle as they face. Hispanic, but there are definitely like pockets at school. There are cliques. There are neighborhoods.
I remember being at Laurel High School. Yes,
there are definitely cliques. But then also like there are neighborhoods. Like if you go across the tracks, there's a big Hispanic community. There are a lot of Hispanic shops and restaurants here, and there's some neighborhoods where it's predominantly black, and then of course Ward 1 is predominantly white. But the point of the protest was to come together and to fight injustice, and to really open our eyes and realize that we really need to, if I think Martin Luther King said, if there's injustice somewhere, there's injustice everywhere, and so you need to fight it and wherever it is.
So how do you feel about, we're almost 1 year from, your fast planning execution of this, the protest and everything like that. How do you feel kind of reflecting on it? Any kind of like change? The George Floyd case is going on now, so it brings back, I'm sure, a lot too with that. For a lot of people it has as well.
Well, I'll go first. Fine.
Yeah.
I would say there was a lot of ways that helped me. Like, it was a fast track. That protest helped me like grow up in event planning, because like there were so many moving pieces that like we couldn't predict like coming into the planning of it. And I do remember like there was times where I was texting Carlos at 2-3 a.m. like, this task is just done, or we need to do this task before 7 a.m. Like I really felt like I was getting paid to like put this event on, but it wasn't for pay. It was just like something that we had to do for the community. And it really inspired me to do other protests. Like, me and a couple of friends, we did a protest from Glen Arden Municipal Center, I think a month later, leading up to FedEx Field. We got the owner of FedEx Field to let us use one of the lots, and we used the same tactics. We went to local businesses, and they donated food, and we actually got a lot more, so we were able to give food to the protesters after they completed the march. And one of the cool things about it is we had a local go-go band march behind us. So it was like, tying in music in the community, and, go-go is very much a part of Prince George's. So, that was great, but has much changed? I'd say somewhat. I mean, like, at the state level, there's been some measures. We did get Anton Black's law passed. Yeah. So Gabriel Acevedo, Delegate Acevedo, he's been celebrating that. And if you remember in my speech, that's one of the things I said. It's like, don't say Black Lives Matter if the next thing if the next thing you don't say is repeal the LEOBR, Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights, and then also Antoine Black's law, which is the MPIA, which is police accountability, which would give us the ability to advocate for our brothers and sisters, and it wouldn't take 3 or 4 months to get autopsy reports and information like that. So I will say that a lot has changed in people's conscience. Like, a lot more people are conscious and aware, and sometimes to a fault, because I see people say, well, everything isn't about race, and yes, and I understand that we're in a hyper partisan and racial world, but I think to like say you ignoring race and don't see race is almost like as offensive, because I am a Black man, and as I said, I was born a Black man, I'm gonna die a Black man. And all I ask is you respect me as a Black man, and I respect you as whoever you are.
Yeah, I definitely remember growing up, there was that narrative push, oh, don't see color. We're all the same. We're not all the same, we're all different. And it's beautiful, it's unique. You identify those differences. But yeah.
Well, you said the biggest change. I mean, that's what I said. I think there's some change. I think a lot more people are aware and awake. But I think change is continual. I think we're going to continue, seeing change. And, we're now going to see what happens with this George Floyd case. But we know that things continue to happen, every day, every week. So we have to continue to advocate and be vigilant and come together.
I try to keep my questions confined to our Laurel area. This conversation will go.
Proud Laurelian.
Yeah. So
friends always say Lauretonian.
Is that Laurel and Lauretonian? Whichever.
Yeah, but as far as the relationships now, you have a trial going on. people are viewing the trial just like they were viewing, what I call the public lynching of George Floyd. And I think, well, how do you feel about racial tensions now? It's a year later.
Definitely, it's people are a lot more aware of it. Just the other day, there was a few weeks ago, there was the hate crime. Because of the pandemic, hate crimes on Asians and Pacific Islander people, AAPI, has increased, and that's horrible. And we just need to keep fighting injustice. With the trial, it's crazy. I don't know how they were able to get nine jurors who didn't see the video, because that was one of the requirements. They hadn't seen the video, and it's definitely.
9 jurors didn't see the video. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was one of the requirements. They were having quite difficulty doing that because we didn't see the video.
Yes, yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, it's that they had to be as impartial as possible. But then with the case, you see people who there was the lady who does the calls with the police, but she saw the video in real the dispatcher. Yes, the dispatcher. She saw the video in real time, and she said that she thought that the camera had froze, and when she realized that it was going on and it was on his neck, she called the police on the police officers. But it's a year later. We need to keep fighting. And one thing that was really interesting to me is growing up, we were always told that the civil rights movement was it was great. Everybody worked together. That Martin Luther King was beloved by everybody, but in actuality, he was not the same rhetoric that's used today to describe Black Lives Matter of violent, terrorists. It was the same thing that the people during the civil rights movement said. Martin Luther King, he was ridiculed.
No, we can talk about that for
We can talk about
Martin Luther King in our history whitewashed. A lot of times, like
he was peaceful.
Yes, and that necessarily wasn't always the case, especially towards like the the end of his life, and just like how he was viewed, like to more so he's like exonerated, in American history and presented to us that way, like. But during the time he was definitely still hated equally, hated equally. But I mean I think to your question, race relations, I would argue that race relations have gotten even worse. Like I would argue that. I mean we're probably seeing more attacks. Even on social media. Like one of the things I said, Trump coming in, he made like being racist like mainstream again.
Yeah.
It definitely wasn't like super mainstream to be like racist. You had to be like more like covertly racist. Yeah. Like now it's just like very, very open. You know what I mean? Like, but I will say that I think some people and groups have found a greater sense of community. Mm-hmm. Like around this issue and injustice and just seeing it for what it is now and kind of the veil pulled back. So I do see some communities tying together, but like the same groups that were at ends, some of those same mindsets still fester today.
I think that the younger group of people are more politically in tune with the electoral process, the local elections. This has been a very eye-opening experience for the young people.
Yeah. Well, definitely. There's this narrative that especially before Trump, is that when Obama became president, racism ended. The Black man was in the highest office. That everything was perfect. Then you saw that once Trump became president, especially his rhetoric really empowered this.
I believe that post-racial narrative.
It's not. No, we're not in a post-racial.
Don't
that was that narrative was pushed, and you really realize that they were just being quiet about it. But Trump really empowered them, and
well, they still took racist actions against Obama before and during his term.
Like growing up, like it was. I remember when he became president, my teacher was really excited. I'm in kindergarten. I said, "Okay, that's great. He's the president. I don't know who that is." But it was definitely weird. I was in the 7th grade when Trump started running for president, and one of his biggest things was anti-Mexico, build the wall, and he was very anti-immigration. And my mother was an illegal immigrant at one point. She's documented now, and she worked every single day of her life to get those papers, and she always paid her taxes. But you just really saw this hatred rise up, and it was very frustrating. And so for 4 years, it was just one thing after another, and we need to open up our eyes and see that this battle is still present. It's still, we need to fight it. We need to fight racial injustice.
And were you able to vote this November?
No, I wasn't.
Because wait, you were actually like, I remember I got Carlos to help me with the judge race. So I was helping one of the judge candidates. She's actually a Laurel resident, now a circuit court judge, April Adam Malouye. And I remember I hit Carlos up, hey, I need a candidate. She needs polling people. Are you down to help? And he got like 4 or 5 people. They went to a couple different polling locations to help her out for a few days. And she actually won. Yeah. You know, she was one of the non-incumbents to win. And, you know, we had 2 African-American women that were outsiders, you know, didn't have judge experience. And, you know, she was one of the ones that I was really proud to help because I had helped her on her very first race, 2016. So, you know, 3rd time was a charm. But I didn't know you weren't able to vote.
I wasn't able to vote.
He was at the polls. He was spending hours at the polls.
And that was, yeah, it was, we took a lunch break and we're so tired, we have to keep going. I wasn't able to vote, and a lot of my friends weren't. And even then, the friends who were 18, they didn't have IDs. They didn't have stuff. You know, they need to make that easier, hopefully with HR1.
Automatic voter registration. As soon as you turn 18, you know what I mean. You need to opt out to vote. You know what I mean? Like if you don't want to vote, like opt out or something.
And that was really frustrating, because it was the biggest election like I feel like will ever be in my life. I remember I was really hopeful, but I truly did not believe that Biden would win. I had given up hope. And so I remember it was even crazier because of all the mail-in ballots. It wasn't on election night when we found out. And so for those 7 weeks, or no, 7 days, I was just so nervous, and I was just every 10 minutes I was looking. I had the news playing nonstop. This is trying to see, oh, Texas is turning blue. No, it's not. Georgia, look at Georgia. What's going on in Georgia?
I think it's because it was your first time. Like my first time, I was doing that, but then I realized like, no, I'm gonna drive myself crazy. Let me just chill out. It's gonna balance itself out.
There were so many things going on last year, and especially when he nominated Amy Coney Barrett, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, after Ginsburg died. And so that was another thing. I went to the Women's March, protesting against this. Because she votes anti-pro-choice. Of course, she's supposed to be in part from now. But so let's just give her a chance. But there was just so much going on. It was like 2 weeks before election. Trump was crazy as ever, and then even then he pushed this narrative that the election was not secure, that there was voter fraud, and then we saw how that ended up. There was a whole insurrection where people died, because he refused to. I don't know.
Well, I'll say something cool about Trump voters. I got a bunch of Trump voters at the Laurel High School poll to vote for April Adam.
Yeah.
A Nigerian Democratic, Democratic judge. And the funny thing about it was just talking to them, as people, right? So not coming, she's the Democratic candidate. More so, I came as she's anti-establishment, which is true.
Yeah.
Even though she is a registered Democrat, she didn't necessarily go along with everything that the Democratic Party was. So that's why I called her anti-establishment, and they love that.
Yeah.
So like I was really happy to get so many Republicans to vote for a Democrat. Like it doesn't have to be blue and red sometimes. Just talk to people.
Definitely, the judges are supposed to write. They're supposed to run nonpartisan.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, whether you have that title of Republican or Democrat, you're still gonna have those same values. And so that's what I was, because there was this flyer that was going around that had a Republican judge circled along with other Democratic judges, because the establishment.
See, he got a whole foray into Democratic Party machine politics.
Mhm.
Because they were running a Republican on a Democratic ticket because it was backed by some high-level Democrats, even though this person didn't win the Democratic primary.
Mhm.
So that was
Yeah.
the contentious area, and it happened to be a white man, and the rest of them were black women. So
One thing that I was really happy about when I was electioning for April, that there were so many African immigrants who came in and said they were so excited
Yes.
that we're going, that that she's running, like her win is all of our win, and
Laurel has a lot of Africans.
yeah, Laurel has a lot of Africans, and
Oh, no, go ahead, finish.
no, it's okay. But yeah, that really opened up my eyes because we really need reform everywhere. So hopefully with HR1, the For the People Act in Congress, that we can get rid of gerrymandering, get rid of the voter ID necessity. Because there were so many people I knew that they couldn't vote because they didn't have a driver's license. There's no ID that they can have. There's so many things that we need to.
And also vote in every local election.
Yes, every
Vote
local
in every
election.
vote. Like I don't care about Trump or Biden or Bernie Sanders.
It's all local.
Even though I wasn't Bernie bro, but all politics are local.
Like,
all roads lead back to home.
Like look at Georgia. Now that they have 2 blue senators, then now we can get things moving. Like it's as local, and people represent you. So state, local, it works its way out.
It's only like 800 and some odd people voted in
In
the
Laurel.
local election last time.
Well, I thought we had a little bit more than that because the mayoral race. I remember like I think Craig Moe, he had like 13, like 1350s, 1368, and Valerie, at large was probably like in the 13. So relatively.
Maybe that was both wards. Maybe that was thinking
Yes.
The turnout is
Yes.
incredibly low.
The turnout is incredibly low, but the thought is I think one, we need to change the charter on how early we allow candidates to campaign because
Yeah.
it doesn't even allow you to pick up a campaign packet until August for a race that's in November. So I think that's at a disadvantage to newcomers, and to build momentum and enthusiasm because that's what new candidates bring to the race. They bring enthusiasm, they bring new ideas, and they energize different bases because the thought is when you get different people running, you get different people energizing different bases. Like obviously, if Carlos ran, he might not have the same voter bases Craig Moe or Keith Sidnor, so that's what we really need to encourage. I mean, I think like we need to encourage more diversity in candidates, more young candidates, more candidates who are women. I know for a fact we don't have many women council members. So
one thing is I think it really it doesn't benefit us in school because they would say, oh, keep politics out of school, but that's something you should really need to talk about in school. Luckily for me, I had teachers, and I was in an IB program where we had teachers who were really involved, and from a young age, I was told voting is the most important thing to do. It is your job. It is the phrase for it. It's your civil liberty. But
absolutely.
There's so many of my classmates who are like, oh, why would I vote? Like there's no point. And like yes, at the end of the day, for like something like the presidential election, a few votes in blue Maryland isn't going to help. But the local elections are extremely important, especially if you want to see real change in your community.
Well, here's what I would say. To that, right, there's many people, because I like to say I'm a young person with an old soul. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of older, relatives and, mentors would tell me, you should vote because there's people who died and bled for you. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate it. I do, right? But there's some young people who are like, they're disaffected by it, right? When I say that. So I don't come with that pitch. I come like knowing my audience. I come, hey, so you care about cannabis legalization, right? Absolutely. Maybe advocating for cannabis. So one of the things is you can find the candidates who are cannabis advocates or pro-cannabis, right? So who you can work with to pass laws that would be advantageous to cannabis users, right? Like that's what you would do. We all vote because of our self-interest, right? So like, don't vote because of that one person. Vote because of certain things, right? Like I vote for people who are going to be better on schools and education issues because I think about my kids' future, right? So like That's many reasons. Just why do you vote? Vote for yourself. Don't vote for anybody else. Find one thing you care about and vote for yourself.
There's one thing you keep complaining about. I'm pretty sure there's something that you can vote about. Vote for.
So I kind of want to break into it just because you've mentioned history a couple times and you've also mentioned education and getting to the young people and that kind of thing. And Carlos, you talked about, what you've learned in school, and a lot of times it is kind of up to the teacher to bring it in. It's not necessarily up to the curriculum, unfortunately. So focusing on Laurel specifically, do you think that there's a way to kind of bring about that change that you talked about as far as the race relations and better understanding people, if there was a way to provide more education to Laurel specific people, or like Laurelites or Laureltonians, however you want to call them, in whether it be like from the museum perspective or in schools as far as the specific history of Laurel?
I think it's important to make history fun. I always like history. Get the students involved. The program I'm in at school, it always preached global involvement, learning where you are and how you can help others. But that should be something that should be taught everywhere. It's of course, like old history, it kind of bores me after a while because it's very repetitive. It's religion fighting, but like local history is so much more interesting. You learn that there's a street there's a street that's named after a slave master,
Yes,
slave family, and you're like, oh wow, that's kind of messed up, and you learn so much, and there's so many people. We're all so similar, so we all have similar views. Of course, there's some people who are more conservative. There's such a wide range, and we need to open up the conversation. Because at the end of the day, when you talk to people, that's how you change minds, and that's how you come to an agreement. And in school, I've definitely had teachers who don't really pay as much mind to that. But then I've had other teachers. I had this one teacher who was extremely anti-Trump, and we would always laugh, and she's like, "Oh, it's you need to open up the conversation and get people excited to learn and to learn about history and to get involved, and because it affects all of us, and you can see real change, especially when young people get involved."
That is a great question. I wasn't even thinking in that direction, but that is a great question. Since I've been in schools in Laurel since first grade, like I could probably tell you that is a great question, because my thought is like, I would love to work with people to figure out how to incorporate more Laurel history, into these like curriculums.
I think we would like that. What do you think?
Yeah,
or do more like maybe special credit projects, because I can tell you as a Laurel resident, I didn't even know that there was a Main Street Museum until this year. And I was like, no, I kept going to that the Smithsonian and the Arts and Space Museum 5 times. I would have liked to take a walk down Main Street and learn some of the history, to learn that the Klan had marched in the Main Street Parade up until like the 80s or 90s, something like that. Like I would have loved to learn things like that, but I didn't really know about it until I got older. You know what I mean? Like, but I think that we should do more education around it. One in the school, and I think we should do like some community events, like community engagement, where like maybe we could have a film night where basically like one of the merchants at the back of the store, we have a projector and like different imagery and videos of like Laurel history. And not just like the beautiful things. Like we need the full spectrum. We need the full spectrum of Laurel history. But like one of the things is I've been walking around Laurel now to know that like Laurel has a lot of history, even by like the riverfront. Like if you go like down by the beach, there's like that little mill. Yeah, there's like a little mill that's like the dam. Like so, there's a lot of like great history just right here in the historic side of Laurel that I would have loved to learn about, as a youth. So I think we should do more community events and tie them into Main Street and the vibrant culture that it has here and rich history.
I think future students might be a little mad. I really think that they should start doing more projects in school.
I think they would appreciate it.
I think
they
so
appreciate it.
But definitely, I would just pick one historical figure in Laurel history, or field trips to the historical museum, or just around, because we're right here. We could walk or we could take a bus. It's
But did you know in 150 years there's only been 6 council members of color?
I believe it.
Yeah, like imagine if other kids could remember, right?
And I think the first one was only like 1990s when it was first started.
If people know, then
Yes.
they'll get interested. And
That's
it's,
a many women I
and
think
maybe you have more people who are encouraged to run,
Mhm.
right? Like you might, well, I can do it too, or they see more young people because you got people like Brentis, and he's young and bring a lot of energy. So that's the thought, is you want to have young people and train them up, so they could be the future leaders.
When I'm thinking even outside of politics, just, people, if they don't feel like they're impacted by something, they don't pay attention to it necessarily.
yeah.
Like you kind of talked about voting.
Mhm.
And we've talked about there definitely is a divide in demographics between Ward 1 and Ward 2.
Yeah.
And Ward 1 has a lot of history that's connected with race. I mean, the Grove is in Ward 1 and that kind of thing. And so I think that if votes, if everybody knew that this was the history that came, and it really wasn't that long ago, and that you can walk and you can see where different, key points of that were, then maybe that would help that communication role we're talking about. too.
Because the Grove is has a lot of Black home ownership, right? So that's part of the
It was
history.
kind of that central, yeah.
Yeah, that's part of the and
Where
that's-
it was the one area that Blacks could live.
Yeah,
for a little bit.
and that's something that we would love to know our history about. Absolutely.
I remember one of my teachers said that when she had first moved here, some people were like, "Oh, you should move over there." And she was like, "Well, what?" My teacher was like, "You're like, oh, well, why? What's wrong with the area?" And she's like, "Oh, it's just the area." And then my teacher was like, "Oh, okay." But
She was probably referring to Ward 1.
she was talking about because my teacher had moved into the Grove,
Okay.
Yes.
and so my teacher was
Yeah.
like, my teacher rolled her eyes, and when she was telling us in school, she rolled her eyes and she laughed.
At some point, more of a high crime area.
But what is it? Yeah. But my godmother, she's from West Virginia. She's white, but she moved down here to Laurel, and her son's my godfamily, my son's godfamily. He's like an uncle to me. He went through segregation. He had to switch schools when they started integrating schools, and I asked him about that, and he was like, "Oh, look, for us it was normal, but it wasn't that long ago."
Right.
And they're people who went to Little Rock. They're still alive. They're still living. The people who threw rocks and who threw boulders at them, they're still in them. A lot of them have apologized.
You know the story of the Laurel Pool?
Yes.
No, I
Yes,
have
the
not.
Laurel Pool was segregated at one point.
Well, it was actually, the story is actually, is that the pool was the site of the original factory, cotton mill factory, the site of it. But around 1949, the community got together and the city gave them the land for $1, and they built the pool, and it was a private pool. And then in the 60s, the people in the Grove had a lot of grievances and were really bringing their case to the city and said, "You guys got to do something about this." And there were some real tensions going on in the city in the mid 60s, 1967, 68. And the city of Laurel decided that it actually took back, the pool was segregated, so they wouldn't allow any people who were Black. And so the city actually bought back the pool so they could integrate it.
Makes sense. And like Martin was saying earlier, people like to say that not everything's about race, but everything's about race, and it's racism is systematic, and that's where the stereotype that Black people can't swim comes from, because when pools started becoming mainstream, the cities didn't like Black people mixing with white people, and so they segregated them. And then people in the inner cities, where predominantly people of color they didn't have access to some. The white flight, the people who moved out to the suburbs, they had the money, they had private pools, they had their own pools, they had community, they had lessons to swim, and that's where that stereotype comes from. And it's all built up, and we need to realize it, and we need to fix it.
I mean, I think Laurel continues to grow, and as Laurel continues to grow, I think the old residents and new residents, we all have to be open for like how Laurel grows, because I think some of the thought is even though we're a small town, we want to keep the super small town vibe, even though you know, we're a town that's population continues to grow.
So I guess I was I put you in the history, but now I'm curious, so on both a personal, but also as far as the city goes, like, what do you feel like is next for you? I mean, Carlos, for you and your friends, I mean, that, you know, junior, senior level of high school can be a time where things can really change quickly in different directions for you in a great way, in different ways and things like that. So, I mean, how do you feel, like Martin said, you know, you've watched them grow just on the
Yeah.
stage trying to, you know, speak
Absolutely.
in front of that many people. A lot of people don't have that kind of opportunity.
Yeah.
So I mean, what do you feel like maybe that's changed, but also just what's next, and has this kind of impacted in any way?
I've definitely been asked if I want to pursue a career in politics, and my answer has always been no, because I really think that politics is a thing that everybody should get in, because at the end of the day it affects everyone. I did this protest because my friends and I, we felt it was necessary. We need to get our voice out, and we're going to continue to stress the importance of voting and local elections. But for me, I really want to go into the biology field, and so I'm applying to colleges that have really good programs in that. But I'm always going to be involved with politics, even if I'm not pursuing a career in it.
I would say, one, I'm glad that Carlos has become a Prince George's County Young Democrat member. So, you know, that of course is great. And one of the things I like to push is we're not just political, we do a lot of community service projects and, you know, really invested in the community, because I think that, like, we need to bring civics back into the school, financial literacy, you know, all those things. But I think that for me, I've grown from, you know, the protest, because one, it allowed me to know, wow, I could really pull off an event, you know, in a short amount of time. And we learned on the spot, like, do's and don'ts. And, you know, for me, it just kind of like further sparked my advocacy, because, like, even before that, I've always been a passionate advocate on whatever I was advocating, whether it was environment, whether it was cannabis, whether it was social justice. And, you know, it really sparked that advocacy. So, you know, I definitely going to continue to be active in public service. And that's why, you know, I don't really like saying politics, because, like, I tell people, if you love me, don't ever call me a politician. You know, I only want to serve the public and, you know, work with the public, because, you know, politicians, sometimes they forget, like, you know, why they're there, and, you know, sometimes become, like, disconnected with the actual people that they, you know, supposed to represent. And so for me, you know, I don't really know. I want to be an entrepreneur, but I definitely am going to run for office, you know, at some point.
That's a real good politician pitch.
He said, really good pitch. Really good. Hey, you know, I wasn't practicing. I wasn't practicing.
We've taken almost, I think, an hour of your time, if not more of that. Is there anything else that you all wanted to share that we didn't ask or didn't cover yet?
So you have a lot of
No, I mean, for the most part, you know, I appreciate, of course, the opportunity, and, you know, I desire to learn more about Laurel history. You know, as a history minor in college, like, you know, history, you know, is very important to me, and, you know, you have to know your history to know where you're going. You know, I do believe that, and yeah.
I got a question for you.
Absolutely.
It was Prince George's Democrat Party.
Prince George's Young Democrats. Yes.
And we've been saying history. You know, I mean, how do you feel about what the African American women have done, like Stacey Abrams and Keisha?
Okay. Well, I mean, of course, I feel it's that. I mean, one, as you said, we need more female leaders. The future is female. I wish Stacey was senator right now, but if she was, she probably wouldn't have been able to help us the same way she did. So everything happens for a reason. But I mean, women have always been like the heart of voting, especially Black women. I mean, like, we should come on. We should continue to celebrate Black women, but it's something that they've been doing. Like, some people are just giving them credit. Like,
it's like we're just saying history. It should be her story.
Yeah.
Now,
Herstory.
you know, because you think about it, you know, they have turned Georgia blue.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And they have always been, like you said, they have always been in the fight, you know what I mean, but in the background, you know what I mean? Because, you know, you think about history, even if it wasn't for the civil rights movement when Black women, white women wouldn't even have any rights, you know what I mean? So, you know, it's we're coming to a point now where the female is kind of really emerging to the front, you know what I mean? And
Yes.
to your point earlier, you said, you know, you want to see more female politicians and, you know, people getting into the political.
But they bring that balance. You
Yeah.
got the males just arguing about the same old things. Like I've been in the rooms, and it's so great to have like a female like sense and like because sometimes like the guys are just arguing, it's just ego. And then
And the girls in
like,
the background.
she's like, wait, guys. So what about these two things? And then you think about it, and then the whole thing that they're arguing about doesn't even make sense because you're not even at that point yet. You know what I mean? So like just having that and having that mindset in the room, and you know, being able to like, I know that my girlfriend, she's very helpful to me. Like I'm just very like, get it done, get it done, get it done, get it done. And then she's like, wait, stop, make a plan. How are you gonna get it done? You know what I mean? Like so like that is like that's why we need more women to continue leading.
Right, I agree with you.
Definitely. In the program I'm at school, I'm one of 3 guys or 4 guys, and the rest of they're women. And one of my friend Courtney Houston, I asked her to speak because she's always been so powerful. She's always been so confident, and I always looked up to her. She was the leader. She was a smart person, a really smart person. And I had asked my friend to speak. Her name was Sydney. She had just graduated. Of course, she wasn't able to do it because of something came up. She got her friend Anushe to do it, and you remember
Yes,
Anushe. She was the one with the boots.
Yes.
And it's
Is she Muslim?
yeah, she's
Yes,
Muslim.
exactly. We
Uh, we
had
need
diversity in our speakers.
We have diversity in our speakers, and that was one thing. Diversity, because like I said before, I was coming from a place of privilege. I'm Mexican, and so I thought it was really important to have Black voices, women voices, and then I also Anusha, she was Muslim, and so she's Muslim. And Sydney, the one I had asked prior, she was Asian American.
Huh.
So the diversity is definitely
It's our fight, and as you said, it's continuing being our fight. Even in the civil rights movement, you know, we had the Chicanos, you know, like you know, teaming up with us, the Appalachians, so you know, so that whole Poor People's Campaign. So you know, those I love to continue seeing that.
Yeah.
You know, in this fight.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
No, I mean,
You guys are awesome.
you know,
Thank you so
Laurel
much.
continue to diversify. You know, 150 years. Let's see another 100.
I had so much fun with the protest. I really think that we did such a great job, and I was so thankful to Martin for reaching out.
And the mayor and,
And
all
the mayor
supporters,
and
like the mayor,
everyone,
they donated water, they donated kids of
There
water.
was
Yes,
so much,
yes.
but we have to give some back. There was this one foundation that came in and they gave out water. It's like, here, we have so much, we need you to take care. And we gave some to the city.
Yes.
And they're like, here, for the next one.
They donated water. You become a politician, make sure they don't change legislation where you can't give people water.
Oh,
in
no.
Georgia.
No, definitely not. We're not going there.
But I was so happy to have done that protest, and the day after, I just sat down and it's a big sigh of relief. The miner was like, all right, what's next? I was like, okay, let's go.
No, Carlos said he needed a day. I remember saying he needed a day.
I need a day. I
I
just need one more day. Just one day to relax. And I had gone there and I was running across that field. That field was so long. I had to run across it like 7 times. And it was like a mile. It was a good mile march.
It was a good mile, but I shouted the whole time.
Yeah, I was in the front with my friend Courtney, and I was like, I'm out of breath, Courtney. I can't do it. I need you to speak. And she was like, I had nothing to do. And then there was this lady. She was marching. She was like, here, I got it. And so she started doing the chants because it was a little dry up in the front. That was on me. But and then I think I went home around 5 o'clock, like three hours after the march and everything had ended. Just picking up, passing out food and water because we had so much. I had to clean up. I had so much fun, and I can't wait to do something maybe in the future. Help Martin with something.
Yes, of course. Community cleanups, wonderful.
Community
Whatever.
Everything.
But Carlos is a friend now.
And,
I would just tell you that as a teacher in the county, talking to other teachers, as you know, we started hearing that the protest was happening. We were just so impressed that it was going to be a group of high school kids. And we were so proud in a sense to know that even though it wasn't our particular students, I know a couple teachers that were like, I want to go and see who these kids are because I want to know if I taught any of them. And you have really impacted a lot of
Mr. Wayne.
adults that you don't know you can
Mr. Wayne, I actually didn't know who he was. Oh, I had seen him in school.
Laurel social studies teacher.
I had Mr. Brennan, Mr. Lloyd, and Mr. Wen. They're history teachers, but I actually have them now.
Brennan AP.
Yeah,
Brennan
AP.
yeah.
Mr. Lloyd to AP and Wen IB. I had Mr. Wang this year, and he's such a funny guy. And
He made me love politics.
yeah,
He made me love politics.
I'm always like the one talking for warm ups and stuff, and he's just like, okay, wait, and I'm just like, okay, this isn't the Carlos and Wang show. Let's but definitely, and I remember seeing my teachers there, and I had emailed them. I was like, hey, can you guys come? Maybe just show some support. And Mr. Williams. Mr. Taylor was there, Miss Black.
So you're like a celebrity. You were like a celebrity.
Teachers from Laurel High School, and
You've impressed a lot of people, just so you know. You should really proud of yourself.
people at Laurel High School, and it was just so happy. And I talked to the principal, Mr. Dinkins, and I was so happy to see everyone there. And there were so many people from school that I recognized, and I had so much fun. There were people I hadn't seen in 10 years. So I was just like, wow.
Well, I think we talked about the numbers, but if you figure, let's say at least 2,300 people, that's like 10% of the whole Laurel population, which is a huge amount of the city's community's population. That was so impressive. It was.
That's yeah.
I remember my friend, she came, and the mom was there, and she was like, I need a picture. I was like, you know me. I have yeah. And then there were people just like, hey, do you remember me? I was like, yeah, I remember you. Do you remember me? But at the protest, I had some.
It was the energy. I could never forget that moment. You know, it was just a great moment sharing it with my neighbors, and you know, yeah, it was. I laughed. I sweat. I feel like I cried inside. Even during my speech, I almost cried a little bit. Like I was like, please don't, see my passion, because the passion was spilling out. You know,
there was definitely a lot of passion in Kenny. You definitely saw him like go up and talk about his experience with racism and
his dreadlocks and profile. Absolutely.
And then Anusha, she was so powerful, and her voice was booming, and yeah, I have all the videos.
I was gonna say,
Oh yeah,
we'd like to hear
all the videos. Yeah.
like also to hear their last names, because you're mentioning your friends' names, but 50 years from now.
Kenneth Williams, Courtney Houston, Anusha, and Anusha something. I'm so sorry. I had my friends who came. Nadia Rodriguez. Well, she couldn't come. She had COVID, so she's really upset about that. She was so upset about that. And
I want to give credit to our sign language interpreter.
yeah,
Remember we had a hard sign language interpreter.
yes. And I remember she was going at it. My friend Rabiatu Ali, she was there passing out waters. I'll send the picture. She had so much. I remember she hugged me. She was like, "Oh my god," and I was like, "I know, it was so great." Kimberly, there's so many people. My friends who helped spread the word. Mame Ajime. So many different. Jody Peacock, she was going to speak, but she couldn't because her sister got COVID. So many people. Maya Lockett. There's so many people I could name, and so many restaurant owners, and just local community leaders. There was the pastor who spoke.
Yes.
Who was the sign language interpreter?
Tennessee. Yeah, she was sweating out there.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to make sure you were credit, because she was working hard.
She was working really
And it
hard.
was great that within that short amount of time, whoever thought to make sure that you had a sign language interpreter was a key of including other diversity as well.
Yeah. Well, she was a young good member, and she was actually an ASO, and she wanted to like practice. So I was like, this is a great opportunity to practice. And we had no clue how many people out there would need sign language. So pretty cool.
I definitely liked it. And then I think the whole protest and our whole speech is on Facebook. It's on the City of Laurel Facebook.
Yeah, I think we have it.
And I definitely I had to come up with my speech like the night before, but
Oh yes, it was definitely like it was definitely like before.
but I had texted all of these people, and I said I'm choosing you because I look up to you, and I really believe that you can send a powerful message. And remember Kenny, and I also asked Kenny's cousin. That's how I met him. Sharing. So, but there's so much I could say. But there's not
Yes.
enough time.
Great moment. Great moment.
You guys can talk. I was there, you were there, and you did, were you able to come?
No, I wasn't there.
It was devastating.
They were there, and you were there, weren't you?
Yeah, so, yeah, I walked over to my neighbors.
Yeah,
so it was great.
yeah, I was there, I was there also. Different group of neighbors, but
So-
yes.
And it was one of those things too where it was nice, where it was like, did anybody hear about this? Did anybody hear where is it coming from? What's going on? And someone's like, I heard it's a group of high school kids. And someone's like, well, are you going? I'm going. Who's going? And the next thing you know, you got, 10, 15 people all walking down the street from the same row of houses.
Yeah.
So,
I'm glad the mayor was there. He was. I got to meet him. He gave me. I got so many cards from local leaders. I had lost my wallet at the protest, and
Oh,
then
no.
I was like, oh no. And so my godmother, she took the mayor's card, and I said, no, you can't call the mayor for a lost wallet. And so she called the mayor, and she was just like, don't worry, he's got it. He's gonna find it. Like he's not gonna find it. I should apologize for wasting his time, but
Did he find it?
no, but it's okay. He found. I ended up finding my credit card, and my tile, a little tracker thing. But yeah.
Forgot to say something.
Yes, the state attorney. There's so many
That's super
people.
cool, yeah.
Yeah. And there was a long list of people who came, and
Yeah, I mean, it was great. It was great.
It was so
I mean, I appreciate, the city for allowing us to use the space, and, helping us.
yeah,
Set like
park
that.
services.
Yeah,
They set up the stage, they
Park
put out
services,
speakers
great.
and tables. It's a good thing we had the tables. We had so
Yes.
much donations, and
Park services is great. I forgot about that.
they shut down Cherry Lane, and that if you don't know, that's like it's a huge highway.
Yeah.
And both sides we stretched around, and even when we were stretching, there were still people wrapped around the lake.
Oh, yeah.
And there were so many people, and then they ran out of water, and so there was this whole help. There's this whole vehicle of people like were help just in case first responders. And I said, can you guys go and get like 20 more cases of water and put them up on top of the hill so that they can pass out water and chips and juice and so many local restaurants and people. So there were some people who reached out, people who made masks, flyers. There was this one lady who made a bunch of banners, and they put the GoFundMe on there. And they were passing it out, and they gave me this painting that they made of two people holding hands, and I still have that. And I love that, and I look at that every morning when I wake up. It really taught me like the power of coming together.
No, I mean, dude, after the fact, I had like literally like a white couple stop me in the street, like, hey, you're the speaker for today. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, right on. Like, but it was just awkward feeling like pointed out. I was just like, like it was.
There were so many good photos of you guys speaking, and I was like, please no. And I looked at mine, and I have like this awkward face, and you can see my short. But
That's a big one.
You
but
gotta post those photos for us.
I'm gonna reluctantly I'll give you the photo of me. But
You need it.
yeah, everyone else is. But you had that shirt on. And that was really
Yes,
cool.
yes.
That's how everyone identified you, and I was like, oh, Martin Mercer. He was the one with the shirt, and you're like, oh, the shirt, we love that shirt. What's it called?
The dashi.
Dashiki. But I had so much fun. I told all of my friends and my teachers, and
But maybe you guys can donate some photos and some articles to the museum.
Well, no, absolutely. I'll send over everything.
send me the Dropbox link. And I can,
The Dropbox link. Okay. Yeah, I got you.
That's what I'll need to do is send you, when you do museums, there's a technical property like that you're giving that to us and stuff like that. So there will be a form.
I'll reach out to some of the people who like donate like photos, especially the good ones, because there's some photographers there,
Yeah, two of my friends.
freelancing.
We just need the, like museums need the chain of command, sort of like, yes, you really gave this to us and we have your permission to have it.
Yeah.
Now, are you 18? You're not 18 yet, right?
No, not yet. In
That's
May,
what I thought.
May 6th.
We need that permission
My mom.
or
Really?
No,
Yes.
it'll
We're
get.
still recording.
I hate
It's
to
not
say
going
that.
anywhere.
I'm saying, I know, I think, well, we can end, we can, you know, we can stop recording.
Yeah, I
We
was just,
can-
as long as I was gonna say that sounds like riff
But,
raff.
yeah. So I think you
We
can,
can wrap up, I think, on the recording, unless you guys have anything else you want to share.
No,
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 not
no,
much.
not really.
Thank you so much, Miss Ann Bennett. Thank you so much.
No,
for
thank
having
you.
us
thank
here.
you. Are you
We're all here to
we
communicate.
appreciate you coming. I know you guys have a busy life, school's still busy, I'm sure, you know. even if you're-
Yeah,
And Mark, I know with your job and responsibilities and stuff, and
and your announcement.
Oh no. I mean, I probably like I said, you know, my kids, they keep me busy. They keep me busy. Oh yes. Well, I mean, no. We're gonna save that one. We're gonna save that one. We're gonna save that one.
Okay.
Trust me, really.
All right.
Too.
Well, thank you both so
Huh?
much.
What you say?
I was just gonna say thank you both so much, you know, for sharing everything. And this has just been amazing to hear your experiences and your insights into the community, into the museum and our history. So thank you so much for everything tonight.
but did you get everything you think, Ann?
I think so, yeah. It'll take a while to process, but then I can, like we talked about, I can upload it to our Dropbox and share the link out with everybody.
Great.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
great interview.
Thank you.
so
No,
much.
This is terrific. You guys were wonderful.
Yes. We'll be doing a Main Street cleanup, April 17th.